Hello, and welcome back. In part 3, I describe what I think the future may eventually look like. Recall that we already have a centralized socialistic government. Take all the legal structures we have now, expand it toward its natural conclusion, and well, you're left with China, American style. But luckily, at least, we have a document which limits government powers over the citizen. And trust me, if the Federalists had had their way, we never would have had the Bill of Rights. Somebody give a shout out to Patrick Henry, George Mason, and all the anti-Federalists, whom, without their resistance, the United States would be subject to an elected monarch. In any case, take current and future governmental structure as a whole. Drop that structure in a world composed of two parties, feminism and MGTOW men. What would that look like? That is the topic of part 3. First, baby farms. Why? And what is a baby farm? Essentially, it's a centralized location where babies are born. I'll go into more detail about what it is in a second, but first, why? Why a baby farm? What's all this about? Well, we already have a central government. I don't care what Republicans think. The federal government is a centralized government. Shut up, Tea Party. It will become more and more socialistic over time. I think that is inevitable. Imagine a culture where the government has become so intrusive it can define by fiat what people do for a living. Imagine the feds in the year 2075 have a 5-year plan. Part of that plan is a population rate target, like the Chinese with their one-child policy. But our culture has transformed into MGTOW versus feminism. So it is expected that family units are a thing of the past at this point. How to keep the population up since the entire population is composed of males and females that are certainly not interested in mating with each other? How would a centrally planned government keep its population up in a culture like this? How do they do it? Well, simply dictate that all young fertile females, say 19 to 30 years old, must have a certain number of babies. Men would be required to submit to semen collection anytime after puberty. During their mandatory motherhood, the women are housed in cutesy, comfy hospital rooms with lounges, sitting areas, a spa, and a small shopping mall where the young mothers can be pregnant, giggle and shop, finest medical care, etc. blah blah blah. After the woman fills her quota, she is given a pension for life, complete with housing, medical and dental, and free public transport. Don't know if cars will even be around by then, with all the green agendas out there. Women get the life they want, are taken care of by daddy government, and they are just happy to be part of the system, as women are wont to do. A life of shopping and leisure, what more could a woman want? And of course, women could be child care takers, etc., if they so choose. Men could take the role of instructor and teacher for these kids. The children are housed in large care centers, complete with gyms, schools, and markets, where they learn all about money management, industry and history, etc. I could see child collectives where they are essentially in a boarding school until they're 18 and old enough to work or get pregnant. What about industrious women? How about state-sanctioned brothels and escort services? Men would still need sex after all, but with no marriage risk. State-mandated health checks of the women and mandatory hysterectomies after the baby farm. Men have all the sex they can pay for and never risk a thing. Of course, women can have their designer clothing shops, wine bars, art galleries, bullshit like that. So, that's women. Where do we fit in this possible future? First of all, once MGTOW-oriented men are equally strong as the feminist opposition numbers, men will inevitably take over the government. I mean, hell, once the female emotional weapons are irrelevant, what can they possibly do to solidify their strength against MGTOW men? They will lose their power precipitously in legislatures once MGTOW come to power. The strong will always dominate the weak. What will there be for men to do under a MGTOW-led legislature? Well, men are driven to build, create, progress. The technology sector will certainly be booming, as will the research industry. Opportunities for new construction methods, medical technology, there will be a vast amount for us to sink our teeth into. So just as the government mandates female pregnancies, under MGTOW-oriented male leadership, it also mandates male productivity. This is only bad news for male feminists and the extreme right, after all. Legislation for this could look like men are required to work and be productive. but they have free choice of any state-funded job training program. Any job. Take your pick. MGTOW being equally powerful, we could dominate the legislature and make this happen. Military would still be necessary, though aside from small conflicts, I don't see it being very big. Space exploration, power generation, engineering, and, of course, we need lots of men to build, run, operate, and maintain all that stuff. Imagine a world of highly trained, highly educated men running a society, no debt, and no feminist infiltration demanding we make room for them. Women are happy, men are happy. Now, I'm not saying no women need apply, but healthy men would be required under law to work. Therefore, they have priority for the training programs. For women, work is optional, and so they must be last in line. Men are given preference to do what we naturally want to do, that is, work, and do the kind of work that interests the individual man. Now, how can we call this a free market economy? It certainly sounds fully centralized, doesn't it? Well, only the training programs are state sanctioned. The private sector will be fully free market, and the training programs will fulfill the needs of highly trained employees, eliminating the need for useless degrees. If a job becomes obsolete, men who are fundamentally capable and adaptable simply file the right paperwork with their local federal agency and are quickly retrained for new appropriate work. Now you can see the benefits of such a system. No school debt, a thriving mobile adaptable economy, and all the dead weight is eliminated. And again, as I said, if a woman enters a training program, she will be just as satisfied. But no company is forced to accept her, even though she is not cut out for such a job. She will have to prove herself in the same training program with the same standards as any man before she is allowed to be placed into an open company position. As for discrimination, since this is a government hiring platform, no company will know whether this is a female or male employee. Thus, the potential for discrimination is eliminated. Remember, this centralized system is the product of our current anti-discrimination laws, and thus, these laws should remain in force in the future. Honest hiring can only really be experienced when all employees are reduced to a number, trained to the same standard, and are only separated by their performance scores. Neither will companies required to have stacks of dead-weight jobs cluttering up their payrolls. This is, I think, the outcome of a MGTOW-dominated government. So, why do I think MGTOW is inevitable? Why do I see MGTOW as the natural opposition to eventually counter feminism? I think feminism will eventually become so toxic to every man associated with it. Men will wake up to it. All of them. But what can they wake up to? Traditionalism is pretty much the only other option. Traditionalism is going away as religion gets overrun by atheism. Just as certain ideologies disappear with each generation, I think the traditionalist mindset will equally become extinct with time. All that will eventually be left is political ideologies. I think the family unit will be seen as nothing but dead weight by both sides, should MGTOW and feminism dominate the landscape. Both left and right voting blocs will be looking for representatives to protect their relative autonomy. With the feminist side already well entrenched, men will be looking for representation. If MGTOW has a well-established voting bloc by then, men will take over the legislature. I don't see any other current political ideology that could ever directly contrast the definitively feminine ideology which dominates the legislature. And considering the indoctrination this current generation has, can anyone ever see an end to it? Only MGTOW directly counters such an ideology. One day it will become so toxic, men will wake up and smell what the vagina has cooked, and it will taste just as rancid as it smells. So, to sum up this possible future, women naturally want to give birth. Men naturally want to work. If MGTOW men become strong in the legislature, I can absolutely see this future as possible. For the men, all the sex they can pay for and mandatory productivity. For the women, mandatory motherhood and a life of leisure paid by the state. This is possible, but only if we have a cultural shift where MGTOW and feminism become the only two dominant forces. Feminism is the only dominant force at the moment, thanks to the huge number of white knights out there. When we grow strong in numbers, we can retake what is rightfully ours, the guiding hand that women simply can't provide. Men are not guided by the concept of fairness like women are. We are driven by the concept of competition, results, and the bottom line. We are the side which is necessary to build a strong future. All Western powers are bowing their heads, and under this current gynocentric state, I think we can already see what feminism has planned for our future. I have great hope that traditionalism will go the way of history, and MGTOW will one day take the tall chair at the negotiating table. Feminists are simply too weak without their male cheerleaders. When white knights are gone, and MGTOW is all that's left, we will take our rightful place in society once again. That is my hope for the future. I hope this idea gives someone listening a new perspective on the future of MGTOW. Thanks for listening.